Election Commission. You stay with us. Welcome back, everyone. Across the world, conducting elections is expensive, and the cost in each country is determined by certain factors and electoral events, some of which includes the structure and size of the democracy, country's population, and frequency of elections. And that's why globally, the average cost per registered voter index is used to determine the adequacy of election funding. For the 2023 election, the figure was pegged at 305 billion naira, and that's about 61.37% increase over what was spent to conduct the 2019 general election. INEC spent about 189.2 billion naira to conduct the 2019 general election. But analysis of the 2023 proposed election budget shows that 9 items account for 76.68% of the total budget. Talk about procurement of accreditation devices takes the bulk with about 34.51% of the entire budget, while provision for runoff elections is 8.89% of the budget. And honoraria for ad hoc staff takes about 7.79%, logistics 7.54%, and printing of ballot papers covers 6.78% respectively. So tonight let's speak with Honorable Bayo Balogun, Chairman House Committee on Electoral Matters, on INEC funding and proposed LG Electoral Commission. Good evening to you, Honorable. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Welcome to Politics Tonight.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
Right, so let's start this way. Poor funding is often blamed for unsuccessful elections in Nigeria. How correct is this?
Well, actually, there is no exercise that will not require funding. And adequate funding, and timely too, is very important for the success of any project. So INEC is not just alone in this area of funding, but any project that is embarked on must be funded at when due. That is what really matters. So funding as at when due is a major challenge in every human endeavor. But that is one area that we have been able to address in the Electoral Act. And that's why funding of INEC, especially during the election year, so in the Act, it is provided that the funding must be ready a year before the election. So the one for 2023 was actually released by 2022. So in tackling the problem of funding, timely funding, the Electoral Act has actually ensured that funding of INEC must be done as at when due.
But you know, as the Chairman House Committee on Electoral Matters, does INEC have enough funding for free and fair elections?
You see, when it comes to funding, it's a matter of what is available too. If wishes are horses, beggars will ride. Like everybody just wants more money, and I think you have to put things in perspective of the economic situation. And if you look at it, if you look at what INEC got for the 2023 election, it was well over 360-something billion, I suppose, was used for the prosecution of the 2023 election. And yes, to an outsider, that's quite high. But if you break it down to what is actually required to the practitioners, it's something they just have to make do with. But funding can never be enough. Because when it comes to INEC, it's not just about the election year alone. INEC is one of the agencies with the highest staff in Nigeria. They have over 15,000 staff. They have offices in all the 774 local government, they have zonal offices, they have their headquarters, and they have other equipments, machineries, vehicles to also cater for. So apart from the election year, the funding on yearly basis is also important. Most of the time, people complain about INEC not being able to do the continuous voters registration exercise. And this has also got to do with funding, providing staff to ensure that people are on ground in all their offices on daily basis to ensure that they continue to register people immediately they are qualified to vote once they reach the age of 18. And those people who might not be at home during the last registration, everybody is supposed to actually come out whenever they feel like. So INEC is supposed to be ready for people to come and register throughout the years. So it's not supposed to be the ad hoc one that we do during the election. So in ensuring that INEC is able to perform this responsibility, it requires constant funding. So that's one of the areas that suffers whenever INEC does not get enough money as required. During the last budget cycle, 2024 budget, INEC was just able to get about 50% of what it actually asked for. So we're still hoping that in the coming supplementary, probably they might get something more, especially now that they're having off-season election. But having spoken to the INEC chairman today, he actually confirmed that.
So, you know, perhaps for the purpose of better enlightenment, because I know, and just as you said, I know the challenge of funding elections takes on several dimensions. And I also know that the Election Project Plan Committee comes up with this figure. So how does the committee come up with a particular figure after a budget proposal submitted by the 23 departments and directors of the Electoral Commission?
INEC, like every other agency, will have their own plans, but the federal government has limited resources. So if you ask for 10 naira, it's not that you must get your 10 naira. So it must be looked at and look at the available resources. Then it will be brought to the National Assembly. So we also look at what is available and what they are given. Sometimes we can take from one area and add to another. Sometimes we leave it as it is, but we must be conscious of the total available fund before we actually do any exercise on this request. So it is not that you bring in 10 naira, you get your 10 naira. Budgeting is never like that. It is what is available that will be shared amongst the various competing agencies. So it's not only INEC that could not get what they asked for. Almost all the agencies will not get what they asked for.
And you know, I mean, according to comparative data, the cost per voter for the 2023 election reduced compared to 2019. Only that the exchange rate had skyrocketed since the last general election. So, so would you say that the increase in the number of registered voters and the creation of more polling units accounted for the increase in the proposed budget for the 2023 election?
Even if you look at, sometimes you are looking at the nominal value. If you look at the proposed budget for the last year, and you look at the value of nairas at that period, so if you compare to what we have now, even if you have 50% increment, the devaluation of the currency has actually taken that away. So what you would have actually purchased with 10 naira 2 years ago or 3 years ago is no longer what you purchase for 10 naira today. But the number of voters are actually also increasing because there is growing awareness. A lot of young people now are now getting involved in politics. The awareness is increasing, and that is what we are encouraging. Instead of people going out doing the wrong vices, the best we can do is to get involved in the political activities so that you can take charge of your own destiny. You should be able to know who to vote for, who not to vote for. And these are increasing awareness that makes the younger ones actually to now start registering. And we could see that from the last election. We had so many areas that were that came different from what people were expecting. So many constituencies really didn't come out as expected, like what we used to have before, because there is growing awareness now. And you could see what Labour Party actually also did. Nobody expected that a new party will perform that much. So that shows that growing awareness, and that means the electoral field is now becoming more liberal. And any
I agree with you, Honorable,
actually come out and do wonders. So
I agree with
that's
you.
what we are trying to encourage.
And because you have also said INEC will never get its entire budget for any election, taking a cue from the last general election where INEC planned to spend 117 billion naira, that's about 33.4% of its entire budget for the polls on electoral technologies, in line with its decision to deploy bimodal voter accreditation system and the result viewing portal in that election. But having done that, during that election, INEC had suggested there were several attempts to hack its servers. But with INEC's resolve to invest more in top-notch cybersecurity systems, do you think there may be more than enough reason to put aside a separate budget for that?
Actually, the issue of the hacking of the RF is not about funding, because the INEC guideline did not actually talk, the Electoral Act did not actually talk about real-time posting on the RF. Okay. It was what the Electoral Act says is that the results at every unit should be posted on the billboard at that unit. But it was an additional guideline that INEC on its own decided to do to at least make the whole exercise at least more credible. But in trying to do that too, we must look at first the internet penetration. How do you get real time in all the areas in Nigeria? Because we have to know that Nigeria is not about Lagos and Abuja or Kano or Kaduna. It's about the rural areas, areas where you don't even have network, areas where you might leave your village to make a call, but maybe travel some few kilometers before you can actually get access to network. But when it comes to election period, elections must be held in every nook and crannies of the country, irrespective of the internet penetration. So these are part of the issues. So it's not just about funding. Funding never affected the technology. But if we want to get real-time results, because we must be very careful, because like a report I read, the German chancellor also said that they will not do electronic voting even in Germany, because they know there might be issues of hacking. So if the advanced worlds are not ready to do online technology, why do we at this level want to ensure that we must? Because the dilemma is, if, for example, during the last election, maybe one of the first and second runner-up was mistakenly declared the winner via the hacking of the internet or the RF. What do you think would have happened in Nigeria today if they've been able to successfully hack the RF and one of the first two runner-up were actually made to have presented to have won the election? Probably the crisis would have had on our hands today would have been worse than NSAS. So we should be careful with what we do with technology, because people believe whatever they see on the internet is true and is valid. It will be an Herculean task to try to correct people that no, what you saw earlier was not the actual result. It was manipulated, it was this or that. So it will be very, very difficult. So you should be careful. We know what happens to people's accounts. How many people's account is being hacked in Nigeria daily? So we even our WhatsApp messages, many times you see various people hacking our WhatsApps. I'm sending various messages to
please, I would like to be clear on this.
Group. So we should be careful with technology.
I hear that, Honorable. So what you say, or are you saying that if INEC is to get more systems, more cybersecurity systems, it has to be from the approved budget? Or are you saying INEC does not need more technology to enhance Nigeria's electoral system?
No, we are saying what kind of technology. I was in South Africa, I was in Liberia. They did not even have these beavers that we are using, this accreditation system, digital accreditation system. South Africa did not even use digital accreditation system. They were just manual. So it is not about technology. Sometimes it's about ourselves. We must trust in ourselves. We must trust in the system. It's not just to put money. We don't just throw money at things. We must be able to believe in the system, because if we are doing the right thing and people don't believe in it, there's nothing we can do that they will believe. So we must be careful. And the worst scenario is when you try and use technology and the technology gets hacked. You would have sent in wrong information and it will be difficult to correct it again. So that's what I'm saying. It's not just about money now. Put money aside. We are talking about, must we take up to every technology that we hear of? Not even minding if this technology is even being used by those people we are actually referring to. In America, they vote manually. In the UK, they vote manually.
Honorable Balogun,
many
you would agree with me that
some people are talking about, yeah.
You're of the political class, so you would agree with me that INEC decided to go digital because the political class had bastardized or abused the manual process. But you made a point earlier, which I would like us to go back to, and this is beyond mere election funding. Another point to pay critical attention to is ensuring that more people turn out to vote on election day so as to avoid waste of funds, because according to statistics, for the 2015 and 2019 elections, the country wasted over 62% of election funds due to low turnout of registered voters, and that's over 250 billion naira. So as we work towards achieving electoral integrity, what workable measures is the National Assembly planning to adopt to ensure more participation? I mean, despite the continuous increase in the number of registered voters.
You see, in the difference between the actual voters and the registered voter list that we have, one of the major problems is that INEC register is even over-bloated. And we have been talking about this. How do we solve it? So many people have died as there. So many people have changed their location, registered somewhere else. There's multiple registration on INEC register. We must be able to clean up this data so that we can get the real figure. To me, I believe INEC total register should not be more than 50 million. But as of today, we have about 93 million. So that means,
is this a challenge to INEC?
We'll be wasting about 40 million ballot paper. Yes, it's a challenge now, but we are looking at how do we solve it. For example, there must be someone who must declare that someone died before they can remove that name. And we have seen a situation where someone who was a candidate of a party was presented to INEC to have died, so that they would change the candidate to another person, only for the person to surface few days before the end of the exercise. So INEC has to also be very careful, because we don't have a system that shows people who have died or who are still alive. INEC said if we were able to work with MPC, and the data they got from MPC was not even workable because it does not have enough information. But what we are trying to do now is how can we merge our NIN number with our PVC data, so that on everybody's registration, you must have your NIN number, which cannot be duplicated. So once INEC is able to run that, if it gets duplicated, it will just remove one. So that's one of the areas we are looking at, and that will reduce this incidence of multiple registration.
All right, Honorable, let's take a break, and when we come back, we will expand this conversation. You stay with us, everyone.
Our planet, our home, threatened by man's activities with fears of mass extinction on the rise. On Green Angle, we examine the issues that affect our environment, seek solutions to put us on track, to secure and restore a cleaner and greener world for generations to come.
Welcome back to Politics Tonight, everyone. I've been speaking with Honorable Bayo Balogun, Chairman House Committee on Electoral Matters, and tonight we're focused on INEC funding and proposed LG Election Commission. Honorable, thank you so much for staying with us on the program. Now let's move on quickly. Younger Africa had consistently raised concern over continuous decline in the quality of our elections, despite reforms introduced, majorly due to electoral infractions. And this, for me, brings to the fore the unending wait for Electoral Offences Commission, which has been a recurrent debate dating back to 2003, when Nigeria was expected to begin the consolidation process of a democratic process. So where are we on this?
Well, it's still being worked on. We are trying to perfect the bill, because during the last dispensation it was passed by the Senate, but it didn't pass at the House of Reps. But we are now trying to represent. But we saw that so many things were not okay within the bill, and we are trying to work on it. After working on it, then we'll now represent it, then go for public hearing, because at the end of the day, it depends on what the people want. Because some people are saying, how many offenses do we even have within how many culprits were actually caught in every electoral cycle? Then at the end of the day, how many are actually prosecuted? How many people are ready to continue with the prosecution? Immediately after the election, everybody believes, well, it's over, everybody goes home. Witnesses are no longer available. The police officer that arrests the culprits must have been posted to another state. It's no longer available to continue the case. Even when it's available, well, it might have taken some time and probably forgotten the whole exercise, what actually happened during the election. So in doing that too, we are trying to put a time constraint, because sometimes this exercise takes years. So, and that would have eroded importance of the exercise. So we are trying to look at how do we put time limits for electoral offense prosecution, just like we did with the electoral litigation. So if it's within 6 months, 3 months, that everything must be dealt with. So that will make proper sense in moving forward with the prosecution of electoral offenders.
Okay, so apart from this one you've just mentioned, what other lapses has the National Assembly identified? And what are the likable corrections the National Assembly is willing to replace with?
You see, what we're saying is that we are looking into it, so that what constitutes electoral offenses. Because sometimes, if you go through what they had before, if you on the day of election, even if I should carry you in my vehicle, it's electoral inducement. If I should buy soft drink and share to people, it's electoral inducement. But we know many people do it voluntarily, you see the CDAs coming out to help people. I come from a local government where we have a very vast land, and people have to be transported from one location to another to get to the center where they are going to vote. So how do you point who is actually doing a favor for someone who is trying to induce the voter? Sometimes it's very sunny. Someone will just buy some pure water, minerals, and share to people. So these are some of the areas we are trying to fine-tune. What constitutes electoral offense? Then in area of cash inducements, there are so many things we do within the community as an individual that you feel, yes, it's just a philanthropic gesture. At what point does it become an electoral offense? So these are the areas we are trying to, because if we are not careful, we make it so ambiguous. It could be used to actually probably target your opponent. If you are, a government in power can use it to target the opponent by saying, okay, your heart of generosity could not be turned as electoral inducement. So these are the areas we are also looking at. And at the end of the day, it's going to be the people that will determine if it's going to pass or not, because we are going to take it for the public hearing. And it's at the public hearing that the main action will actually be. And I want to use this opportunity to appeal to people. We are going to take our public hearing very seriously in electoral matters, in the electoral reform that we are doing.
That's very important.
We've been going around the zones. Last week we are in Rivers. In Rivers, talking to people to submit a memorandum to be put together to form the basis of our amendment. And after the compilation and presentation on the floor of the House, we will now go for public hearing. At the public hearing, we want to ensure that if we cannot even go to every state, we want to make sure that we get to at least 2/3 of the states, so that people will be administering questionnaires ahead of our visit, so that people will submit at the end of the day, on the day of presentation, during the public hearing. We want to have a digital analysis of of people's opinion. So the questionnaire will be served. People will tick whatever as they want, and they will run the regression analysis so that we can get the feeling of the people. And it must be spread across the 6 geopolitical zones. So even if we are going to go to 20 of 24 states, it must be spread equally among the geopolitical zones. So it's going to be what the people want. We are just to collate what your opinions are. So that is what we want to do this time around, so that if people are involved in the enactment of any law, they will feel very comfortable to participate and obey the law. But if they feel that, oh, you are the one that did it, then they feel so unconcerned. But we have done it together. They will know that, yes, we own this, we did this together, and we are going to ensure that it works. So we want to ensure that by next year, we are going to have an electoral act that everybody will be proud of, because they will feel involved, they will feel they've done it together with us, and will be ready to support it to make sure it works at the end of the day.
I'm sure some Nigerians will say next year is too far, but I think you have a point. But talking about inducement, how embarrassed are you that the deputy minority leader of the Nigerian Senate, that's the Osun PDP Senator, Larry Oyewumi, admitted to partaking in vote buy during the 2023 general elections? I mean, is this not a disgrace to the National Assembly? And Nigerians expected that he should have been prosecuted.
Well, I didn't get that information firsthand. I've just been hearing over the.
Honorable, you didn't see that video?
I heard from some people, but I've not gotten the detail. No, I've not seen it.
Okay. Please, you should look out for it, so that perhaps next time we're having this conversation, you would tell us what has happened to him. But don't you think this is why Nigerians feel you and your colleagues in both chambers would not want to let this bill come to life, so as to protect the political class? Because when you say there must be what is electoral offenses, what constitutes electoral offenses?
You see, it must be clearly stated. That's what we are saying. Because if they are not clearly stated, then prosecution will be very difficult. That's why the Nigerian police will go to court with about 20, 30 count charges. And at the end of the day, they don't get any prosecution. So that is what we are talking about. Once they are clear and no ambiguity, you know what constitutes electoral offense, what constitutes vote buying. Because if for example, in the execution of my duties, I'm also allowed to do palliative within my community, constituency projects, then at what point do you count my constituency project or distribution of palliative as inducements? So we have to be very clear. If there are going to be amendments to say that, okay, at also point, no form of philanthropic gesture. But if you look at the last election, the UK election, even the Prime Minister was out distributing things to his people, and he believes he's helping them out during the hard time. It happened during Trump election to his second election. He was distributing palliative to the people because we still have the effect of the global economic global turndown still affecting everybody. In Nigeria today, we've just been given some fertilizers by the federal government to distribute in our various federal constituencies. We're still planning other palliatives too. The federal government is still planning palliative to be given to people in terms of food and support. No, what we are saying is, once you are doing your job, should we? No, there's no election now. What we are saying is, we must be clear. Should we say so months to an election, there shouldn't be palliative distribution? Should we say philanthropic gesture by even private people should be stopped? So we must be clear about what should be considered vote buying. So if someone has said that, oh, I actually bought votes, well, that means that person actually agreed that he bought votes. And we don't need the tribunal, I mean the electoral offense tribunal, before people are prosecuted. The police is already doing the job with INEC. What we are just saying is, let's make it an entity on its own so that it will not continue to weigh INEC down. We believe INEC is doing so much. It should not be concerned with the issue of prosecuting offenders. Probably that should be removed from its function and that of the police, so that we can have an entity on its own. So not that anybody found guilty today will not be prosecuted. They will be prosecuted.
All right.
So if anybody agrees that I have offended, well, it's left for the police.
All right. So, but how will you rate provision of people living with disabilities by INEC during our elections?
Yes. In fact, in line with the inclusion policy of Mr. President, leaving nobody behind, INEC also has been doing so much to help the people with disability. The people with impaired vision, we have a special voting material for them now. It's like a braille. So before the law allows you to call on someone to come and help you. But now, if you don't want anybody to help you, there is a way you can now vote as a visually impaired person, a blind person, that will be able to vote without support. Although, when it comes to bill reading, it's not everybody that is educated. It's only the educated people that can actually, visually impaired person that can actually read that one too. So, but at least we've created an opportunity. Also, in area of queue management, we've ensured that all the people with disabilities should be allowed to vote first, so that they will not be able to stay. They won't be spending so much time in the sun, especially the albinos. The people living with albinism cannot stay in the sun. Their president just told me recently that I was able to vote for the first time during the last election because of that provision that says that they should be allowed to vote first. So these are part of the areas we'll be using, what we have done to ensure inclusivity in the electoral process.
So what about an amendment to the Electoral Act to enable early voting by essential service providers? What's the status of the bill?
Well, it's part of the issues we are considering. And by the time we go for public hearing, it depends on the opinion of the people. It's one of the areas that we have noted. So we'll be making presentation on it. So by the time we present it on the floor of the House, if it says true, we'll go for the public hearing. And if it says true too, then I think it will be good to go. But I think it's something we're actually looking at positively. Even people in correctional service too, should they be able to vote? In South Africa, people in correctional service are allowed to vote. So they do early voting in such areas. And even if you're going to be on that day, once we're able to pass the law and it's accepted, then people in correctional service will be able to vote, and people on essential services too will be able to vote. Although they might not be able to vote for constituencies they are not in. For example, if you register in Surulere and you are working in Bejuleki on the day of election, you should be able to vote for the president, because that will be common, the governor, which will be common, but you will not be able to vote for the senator and House of Rep and House of Assembly, because those ones are not covered by you in that area. So you only vote for only the president and the governor, because you are still in Lagos, and the state governor that covers Surulere and Bejuleki.
But do you think inclusion of photographs...
And that's what they do in Liberia too. In other areas they are doing it.
Right. But do you think inclusion of photographs and names of candidates on the ballot paper in elections, do you think it's necessary? Because, I mean, given how litigation drags on sometimes, the candidates for election are resolved by the courts less than 48 hours to election.
No.
Is it really practicable?
Yes. No, I think it will be expensive. It will be expensive, because if for any reason a candidate was actually changed few days to the election, that means you have to go and reprint the old ballot paper. That would be very, very expensive. And I don't think we actually need that now, because what our law says is that it's the party that nominates its candidates. So it's the party you are voting for. So that wouldn't be necessary for now, but probably later, when we would have perfected our pre-election issue of primaries, where issues of primaries would have been resolved. Because one of our agenda is to ensure that we resolve every litigation on pre-election matters before the general election. So if we are able to achieve that, then we know that once we print the ballot paper, nothing can change it again. So maybe at that period. And then we would have also reduced the number of the political parties to a bearable number, because if we want to put the pictures, that means the ballot paper will be bigger, and with this large number of parties, it will be very, very difficult. You have a very long ballot paper, and that alone can also be too bulky. So, but when we get to the time, we will do it, because we're actually doing that before. It was stopped because of this issue of litigation coming late after printing of ballot papers.
So, I mean, still talking about what is possible, I want us to talk about the special nature of election petitions with a particular focus on this 21-day conundrum. And I'm asking you because I know you're a big proponent of all electoral cases must be resolved before swearing in. How feasible is this?
It's visible. It's visible. One of the areas we are looking at is, first, people that come with frivolous cases must be stopped one way or the other. We cannot continue to bring cases that we know will never fly. But these people are being encouraged sometimes by their lawyers. Their lawyers encourage them to take the cases because some of them need these cases. Some of them who wants to become son knows that the easiest way to win litigation is to take electoral cases. And if they're able to do 3 or 4 cases, it will actually do something for their record. So we are looking at a situation where people who go to court with frivolous cases will be fined along with their lawyers. So that will be, will ensure that serve as a deterrent to others so that they will not continue to waste time of the court. If you know the thousands of cases that have been handled during the tribunal period, the judges have been overwhelmed, and we can no longer continue that way. And we're also looking at a situation where we can put in the document required by the courts. We're looking at creating a website where all the possible documents can be transmitted, and the court will have them already. So situation where you'll be asked to go and bring certified true copy of this or that, all this information would have been within the court. So this will save a lot of time. So if you're able to reduce all the time used for filing of documentation and all the other, so these are the areas that we want to save time. All the hours, all the months and weeks that we can save by ensuring some processes are shortened. So these are the areas that we want to shorten the exercise, so that at the end of the day, we'll be able to meet up with the required time before the general election. Because even after the primaries, like we said, the major issues, the major cases that they are actually taken to court are more of these pre-election matters. So we also want to strengthen the process of primaries within the various political parties, because it is very important for us to ensure that all the laws within the Constitution, the Electoral Act, and the political parties' Constitution too are no longer ambiguous, so that it will be so clear for everybody to see. So if you know you are violated, you know you are violated, so that you will not be spending so much time. Because most of the time what they take to court are pre-election matters, areas of qualification of candidates. These are the things they take to court most of the time. If you look at the 2023 litigation, it was more about pre-election matters. So once we make sure that all these areas, we remove all the ambiguity in all these laws. So once you see it, you know, yes, this is what A is A. A is no longer A minus or A plus. A should be A. So once we remove all this ambiguity.
Because of time, Honorable, talk to us about the proposed LG Electoral Commission and the impact it will have on grassroots mobilization, which, we all know is essential for electoral process.
Well, that was actually proposed by a senator, and well, to me, I believe the Constitution created created INEC and also created SEC with responsibilities. INEC to conduct election at the federal level, which include the president, the governor, National Assembly, and the State Assembly. And the SECs are saddled with the responsibility of conducting election at the local government. So until that section that created SEC is amended, I stand to be corrected. I don't think we can, and any act of the National Assembly can displace the Constitution. So that's my position on that. But as it is, we believe INEC has enough powers to actually coordinate the activities of the SEC. Because in the Constitution, the National Assembly has been empowered to make laws on local government election, to regulate local government elections. And INEC and the National Assembly have actually empowered INEC in Section 150 of the Electoral Act to conduct election in the local government in line with the guidelines used in the local government in FCT. So that means the local government, as it stands today, should have their election as conducted by INEC. So with that, I believe if we're able to sit down, look call all the stakeholders together, and we find a way of implementing what we have on ground instead of creating another. Because if we create another agency that is also federal, the state might go to court, and that might lead to another turn of litigation. But we are still thinking of how to juggle around what we have on ground, so that we tend to have a stakeholders meeting of all the concerned people, so that we look at all the laws and see what we can do in the shortest.
So I'm sure we'll
because it's already affecting some of the local governments now. They want to have their election.
Absolutely. But I'm sure we'll have another conversation.
Like I said, most of the local government now are supposed to have their election.
Absolutely. So I said that I'm sure we're going to have another conversation after that meeting. So we'll have an update. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Great conversation. I've been speaking with Honorable Bayo Balogun, Chairman House Committee on Electoral Matters. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, sir. Thank you for watching, everyone. That marks the end of today's episode of Politics Tonight. But you can watch the repeat broadcast of this episode at midnight. Get in touch with us on our social media handles, Facebook, Instagram, and X at TVC News NG and at Olajumoke WO using the hashtag Politics Tonight. We're also on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News Nigeria. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Good night, everyone.